There are people who cry too easily. People who overthink simple conversations. People who feel exhausted after being around conflict, criticism, or emotionally cold people. And most of their lives, they hear the same words. You're too sensitive. You take things too personally. You need thicker skin. But what if sensitivity is not weakness? What if the people labeled as too sensitive are actually reacting normally to experiences that trained their nervous system to stay alert all the time? Because psychology shows something disturbing. Many highly sensitive people are not simply emotional by nature. They are people whose minds learned early that emotions were dangerous, unpredictable, or unsafe. And once that happens, the brain begins scanning everything deeply. Tone of voice, facial expressions, silence, rejection, distance, disappointment. Nothing feels small anymore. This is the psychology of people who are called too sensitive, and why their emotional world is far more complex than most people realize. Before you judge yourself for being too sensitive, stay until the end of this video. Because what if your sensitivity is not weakness, but the result of experiences that changed the way your mind learned to survive? If you've ever felt emotions more deeply than other people, if certain words stay with you for days, if you constantly overthink, absorb other people's energy, or feel hurt by things others ignore, then this video may explain more about you than you realize. And if this topic speaks to you, take 1 second to like this video, subscribe, and share it with someone who has always been told they are too emotional or too sensitive. You never know who might finally feel understood because of it. The phrase too sensitive is often used as criticism. But in psychology, emotional sensitivity is not automatically unhealthy. A highly sensitive person tends to process emotional experiences more deeply than average. They react strongly to stress, social tension, emotional shifts, rejection, and overstimulation. Research on highly sensitive persons, or HSPs, suggests that some people naturally have nervous systems that absorb more emotional and sensory information from their environment. This means they may notice subtle changes in mood, emotional tension between people, hidden meanings in conversations, signs of rejection or disapproval, loud environments or emotional chaos. Their brains are constantly processing details others ignore. But here is where it becomes complicated. Not all sensitivity is natural temperament. Sometimes sensitivity is created by emotional survival. And there is a huge psychological difference between someone who is emotionally aware and someone whose nervous system became hypervigilant because of childhood experiences. Many people who are called too sensitive grew up in emotionally inconsistent environments. Not always abusive, not always violent, but emotionally confusing. Maybe love was unpredictable. Maybe affection disappeared without explanation. Maybe emotions were ignored, mocked, or punished. So the child learned something important very early. If I pay close attention to emotional changes, I can protect myself. This creates hypervigilance. Hypervigilance is when the brain becomes overly alert to emotional danger. The nervous system starts scanning constantly for signs of conflict, rejection, abandonment, or emotional withdrawal. As adults, these people may seem overly emotional, but internally, their brain is trying to prevent emotional pain before it happens again. That is why a small change in someone's tone can trigger anxiety, why delayed messages can feel like rejection, why criticism feels devastating instead of constructive. Their emotional reactions are often connected to old emotional conditioning. The brain remembers what the body survived.
One of the strongest psychological traits of highly sensitive people is overthinking. Because they process experiences deeply, their minds replay conversations repeatedly. Did I say something wrong? Why did they look at me like that? Are they upset with me? Did I disappoint them? Their brains are trying to solve emotional uncertainty, but this constant analysis creates emotional exhaustion. The problem is that sensitive people are often highly empathetic. They care deeply about relationships, emotional harmony, and how others feel. So when tension appears, their mind treats it like a threat that must be fixed immediately. This creates anxiety, emotional burnout, relationship insecurity, fear of abandonment, difficulty relaxing. Eventually, they become trapped inside their own thoughts. And the cruel irony is this: the more emotionally intelligent they become, the more emotionally overwhelmed they often feel.
Rejection affects everyone. But for highly sensitive people, rejection can feel psychologically overwhelming. This is because emotional pain activates many of the same neural pathways as physical pain. For sensitive individuals, that pain response is often intensified, especially if they grew up feeling emotionally unseen. When someone repeatedly experiences emotional invalidation as a child, they often develop a deep fear that they are fundamentally too much for others. Too emotional, too needy, too intense, too complicated. So even small signs of distance can reactivate those fears. A short reply, a cancelled plan, a colder tone. To another person, these moments may seem insignificant, but to someone carrying unresolved emotional wounds, they can feel enormous. This is why sensitive people often struggle with attachment anxiety. They are not simply afraid of being disliked, they are afraid of emotional abandonment.
One of the most common psychological outcomes of emotional sensitivity is people-pleasing. Sensitive individuals often become experts at reading others emotionally. They learn how to avoid conflict, keep others comfortable, prevent emotional tension, anticipate emotional reactions, suppress their own needs. Why? Because many learned early that emotional safety depended on keeping others happy. So they become emotionally adaptive. They apologize too much. They struggle to say no. They over-explain themselves. They tolerate unhealthy relationships longer than they should. Not because they are weak, but because their nervous system associates conflict with emotional danger. Over time, they lose connection with their own emotional boundaries, and eventually, they begin carrying everyone else's emotions while silently neglecting their own.
Modern culture often praises emotional detachment. People who appear unemotional are called strong. People who deeply feel emotions are called dramatic. But psychology suggests emotional suppression is not the same as emotional strength. In fact, emotionally numb people
are often disconnected from themselves. Highly sensitive people feel deeply because their emotional systems are highly active. And while this can create suffering, it can also create extraordinary emotional awareness. Many sensitive people are highly empathetic, creative, intuitive, compassionate, emotionally perceptive. They notice pain others miss. They understand emotional nuance. They connect deeply with art, music, storytelling, and human emotion. Sensitivity becomes harmful only when it is mixed with unhealed emotional wounds. Because then, empathy turns into self-sacrifice, awareness turns into anxiety, and emotional depth turns into emotional exhaustion.
The goal is not to become emotionally numb. The goal is to become emotionally regulated. There is a difference. Healing sensitive people often begin learning how to separate present situations from past emotional wounds, how to stop personalizing every emotional shift, how to create healthy emotional boundaries, how to calm an overactive nervous system, how to feel emotions without drowning in them. And most importantly, they learn that sensitivity itself is not the problem. The real problem is growing up in environments that taught them their emotions were unsafe, excessive, or unwanted. Once that belief changes, sensitivity stops feeling like a curse. It becomes emotional intelligence with boundaries. And that changes everything.
Some people are not weak because they feel deeply. They feel deeply because life trained them to pay attention to emotional danger. Because when love becomes unpredictable, when affection disappears, when emotions are ignored, the nervous system adapts. It learns to scan, to analyze, to anticipate pain before it arrives. And years later, the world calls that person too sensitive. Without realizing, they may simply be someone who spent their entire life trying to feel emotionally safe. The truth is, sensitivity is not the inability to handle life. Sometimes it is the result of handling too much for too long.
If this video made you see yourself differently, don't just scroll away. Leave a comment below and tell us, have you ever been called too sensitive? And how has it affected your life? Share this video with someone who feels emotions deeply, but has never had the words to explain it. Sometimes one video can make a person feel understood for the first time. And if you want to better understand human behavior, emotional healing, and the hidden psychology behind the way we think and feel, watch the next videos on this channel. There's a reason certain patterns keep repeating in our lives, and the next video may help you understand yours.